People who have jobs where you go inside homes, what's the worst thing you've seen? Heating company person here. We went into a home to install a new furnace, but turns out he needed a new heat run put into the upstairs bathroom. I should also mention that the dude has been without running water, electric and gas for about 2 years. Guess what we found piled up all over the bathroom floor? I honestly don't know how he was living there, but we called some people to get him the help he needed. Used to clean up apartments after people had moved out or been evicted. One apartment was Section 8, and the tenant who was receiving Section 8 got cut off because she broke a bunch of the Section 8 rules. Apparently, the last 6 months of her living there, she had actually moved out and turned off services, but still let her kids live there. Late teens to early 20s, I think. So the kids who lived there trashed the place. When I got there, the floor was covered by 2 feet of trash, clothes, broken furniture. Food had been left to rot all over, and the place was filled with bugs and fleas, and it smelled like a garbage dump. The worst, though, was the bathroom. The water hadn't been on in a good long while, but they kept doing in the toilet until it filled up. Then, when that had gotten full, they shat in the bathtub and into 5-gallon buckets that they had left around the house. All in all, it was about 200 pounds of human S in the tub. I had to pack it up in 1-pound bags, bag that bag, and then put no more than 5 bags in a sealable pail and take it to a special waste treatment site. Second to that was the 5+ bedroom party house that a bunch of professional snowboarders had lived in for a year or two. They got evicted for not paying rent or something like that, and they had trashed the place before they left. The worst thing in that place was that there was a gap, and maybe 3/4 of an inch, between a bathroom vanity and a piece of glass for the shower enclosure. Someone, or maybe all of them, decided that they were going to store their used condoms there. At least 100 were stuck in there. It was gross, moldy, and eventually we had to rip out the vanity because that was the only way to ensure that it was clean. I lived well over a year in a place with little running water. It was inconvenient filling up a bucket on the way home to flush with, sure, but I would never have just gone with S in the tub. Also, I imagined you with a garden trowel and a triple beam balance meticulously weighing each bag of S, getting tear weight on the empty bags, etc. You made my evening. The bathroom floor was covered in feces and urine, floor stained brown, and I had to clean it on my hands and knees. I'm going to quit this job this week. I worked cleaning houses for a while, and legally your employer cannot ask you to clean bodily fluids without protective equipment. I worked for a while cleaning offices, and one of our clients was a doctor. Our employer just gave us gloves and spick and span. There was a puddle of blood the size of my hand in one of the rooms, and when I called him to ask what to do, since I wasn't doing it without PPE, he told me to put on a glove and wipe it up. That was pretty much the last straw. I did remodels for a while. The worst one was a legitimate hoarder. That house was disgusting. She had to clear a path for us to get to the bathroom with our tools so we could work. Lots of cats too. The house smelled very strongly of cat pee. I'll never forget when I went to the back looking for the water hose. There was a pool filled with disgusting algae-covered water and a dead cat floating in it. I was very happy when that job was over. At least her bathroom looked great. I used to clean carpets. We went to a double-wide trailer once and had about 20 cats inside, plus 3 dogs. I didn't see a single litter box. And by the time we were done, the slate grey carpet was almost white again. The ammonia smell inside made me puke, but the old couple that lived there acted like nothing was wrong. I used to work for a carpet cleaning company. I've had some interesting stories, but this one always takes the cake. We had this program where we hired special needs people part-time. So we hired this new guy, Bob. Bob's a rather large fella, not the fastest thinker, but really nice to work with. Bob and I showed up to clean a couple rooms in this couple's mansion. It was immaculate. 2 gay men in their 40s. Never mind the paintings of half-naked dudes all over the walls. So part of our job is to move furniture to clean under them. I had Bob help move the bed. and this giant 2-foot leopard print veiny dick rolls out like a dead possum. Bob stares. No word spoken. I clean around it, kick it under the bed, and move it back. Bob and I finish the job and get in the van to leave. Bob turns to me and says, "Where did they get that leopard's dick? And what are they going to do with it?" I still cannot tell this story without laughing. I love how, among the sea of stories about dead animals, the story about sex toys still manages to allude to dead animals. Nevertheless, this story made me smile. I walked into a house where a family had 2 dogs that they had trained to use those pee pads, but instead of throwing them out, they just laid a new one on top. The strange smell was bad, but the ammonia smell actually burned my nose. How people can go nose blind to that, I'll never understand. Had a hoarder once in a giant multi-million-dollar home. I worked my way through a path to get upstairs and saw that the only accessible area was the master bed. And even then, only had a 2-foot wide path. Down the hall I could just make out 6 bedrooms and probably a bathroom, but crap was stacked up nearly to the ceiling, making it completely inaccessible. The woman that owned the home said she hadn't been down to the end of the hall since the early 90s. I've seen a lot of hoarders. It usually catches me off guard because it can be any house or apartment. They can look completely normal from outside. I actually know one person who lives like both of your horror stories. We used to be friends, but I can't be over at her place anymore because of all the hoarding, and now the dog issue. She's gone totally nose blind to the puppy pad smell, and it hasn't even been 6 months yet. I feel bad for the people who live in the apartment below her. This one is bad, and not so much for its gross factor, but rather the circumstances. I used to work in pest control in a major city, and this included some low-income rentals. I was inspecting for bed bugs when, sure enough, I found them in one of the units. Being that this was a number of years ago, it was and probably still is standard practice to toss out the mattress entirely. Have you ever tried to tell someone who probably has no disposable income that they need to throw out their mattress and buy a new one? That pretty much killed my day. That mind blows. Wouldn't they also have to power wash most of their clothes and not wear them for a while? One of my friends got bed bugs in her room after having a human S-bag of a friend sleep over, and she basically had to vacate the space and keep everything in plastic garbage bags for more than a month. Needless to say, she didn't enjoy sleeping on the couch in the living room of a college rental house. When I was in the Air Force, I had to pull some First Sergeant duty while the actual First Sergeant was on leave. First Sergeant was responsible for the morale and well-being of the troops in the unit. He responded directly to the commander with any issues. We got a call to report to a troop's house in base housing. When we got there, CPS was outside and the cops were inside. When I got inside, it was the most disgusting thing I had ever seen. Dog S everywhere. On the floors, on the beds, counters, piles of dirty clothes in the bedrooms, dirty dishes piled up high. The troop was deployed to the Middle East. It was just his wife and kids in the house. The wife truly didn't understand what was wrong and why her kids were being taken away. Her husband got recalled from deployment to deal with it. I don't know what the final resolution was since the actual First Sergeant came back and took over the case. I was happy to hand it over. In the Marines, I was friends with a couple that lived like this off base. You would never have known it from the way the couple acted. They were a normal young couple. The husband was a CPL and the wife was a nurse, and neither of them smelled or acted strange. One night they invited me and my roommate over, and the place was covered in trash and dog S. They had a patio for their apartment and they just let the dog S out there, but didn't mind if it S'd inside too. I never understood how they let that happen. I've never noped out of a place so fast. I ended up helping them move when they had their first child, and the house they moved into was beautiful, and they kept that place spotless. Maybe not getting a security deposit back in SoCal helped them get squared away. I was a realtor showing a house that had a tiny powder room. The owner had attempted some kind of faux finishing sponge painting technique in bright red over white walls. It looked like someone had pulled out a full tampon and helicoptered it. Now this room is definitely taste specific, but you'll want to take note of the complete absence of dead cats. I used to work for a company that did fire, water and mold cleanups. We got called to a mold cleanup due to water damage, and these people were hoarders. Useless S stacked to the ceiling. All of it had to get tossed due to being in contact with a really toxic form of mold. So once we reach the basement and we're tossing, we find 2 cat carcasses. The whole basement smelled terrible. We knew something was up, but we couldn't really put our finger on it until we found the decayed cats. The owners just shrugged it off. Disgusting people. Could you tell if they were stray cats that got in or if they belonged to the owner? My parents had a raised house in Dallas. For some reason, dying cats would get under their house to die. For a while, my dad was pulling a different dead cat almost daily. He finally got the bottom of the house properly sealed. Used to work for a service company that would respond to apartment renter issues. Walked into a studio apartment at an upscale complex for a reported issue with the dryer. As soon as I walked in, a majority of the walls were covered with porn from porn magazines. The renter torn out hundreds and hundreds of pages from dirty magazines and tacked them to the walls. Everything else was normal and clean. The furniture was clean, the floors were clean, no evidence of hoarding of any kind. Kitchen was spotless, no smells or odors. Apartment was fully organized, but just porn all over the walls. Perhaps his apartment was frequently being shown to prospective renters and he was sick of it. I often hear people advise others. A way to avoid frequent nuisance showings from the property management is to put up risque decor like that. It was a while ago, but one guy's house had a hole cut between 2 floors and had a lovingly maintained old Victorian steam-powered concert organ set up in the hole. Not necessarily bad, just odd. It was a regular suburban house. Owner was super weird though. The rest of the house was filled with garbage and smelled like cat pee. Oh man, that sounds awesome until you get to the last sentence.